Okay, so this is the second video in the CSC1231 Database Development and Design 1 series, and I thought it's a good idea to think at a high level about this. One of the things we want to do in this course is design, and that means thinking about stuff. Now, I'm an engineer. I've been doing software engineering for quite a while, and just about every organization I've ever worked in has a process, and each organization's process is a little different. Process for doing engineering. I'm developing products, developing software, making mechanical widgets, that sort of thing. But they all get written down, and they all have reasonably structured approach to development, to design. And this is one example. This is a design process from my Intro to Engineering course. So there's define objectives, choose a design strategy, gather information, make a first attempt at the design, build a prototype, document the prototype, test it. Does the prototype meet specifications? Then you revise and go round that top loop perhaps. If it does meet spec, then you test the finished product. Does the finished product meet specifications? If it doesn't, then you revise. If it does, then you can take it to market. And that's one way to think about it. I actually prefer a slightly more generic approach, and that is this thing called the design V. And here we start up on the left hand side up here, right, with concept of operations. What's our idea? What are we trying to achieve? And from that we can write down the requirements. And requirements are usually English language explanations of what we're trying to do. And then we might choose the architecture. We might then do a high level design, then a detailed design, then we implement it. And once we think we've starting to finish implementation, we can start testing. And once we start testing, we can work our way up this side. This is a very generic way of looking at development. You can see design is part of that, but there's other pieces. There's what I call systems engineering or requirements engineering at the front end. And then there's QA or quality assurance or testing or validation and verification at the other end. At Central Connecticut State University, in their computer engineering technology program, they have to do a capstone project in over a whole year in CET497 and CET498. And in that capstone, they follow this process. And it's a similar idea to what I had, maybe a little bit more documentation heavy, right? Concept development, preliminary design, prototyping and detailed design, finalized design and prototype, and then we're done. A friend of mine works at Roku. I actually think she's now vice president. I'll have to check. I'll have to give her a call. But Dr. Beth Logan works at Roku, and she's their lead data scientist, and she figures out what they can do with their data, what they need to do with their data, and she follows this data science process, right? So we have an idea, we do some tests in the lab, we do some small scale live tests on people actually using their Rokus, then we might do a large scale test, and then we might write how our customers might use those features, and then we put it into a product and we sell it. Okay, so it's kind of an interesting idea, but again, it's a way of moving from a very nebulous thing, an idea, to something that the company can sell. So that's the Roku process, and generally how we're going to approach it. I thought it would also be good to have a look at an overview of the modules in the textbook. And let me just see if I can zoom in on this a little bit more so that it's a bit bigger. And then no. Right, so module 1 is just an introduction to database management. Then we might talk about the relational model. This course is primarily about relational databases. There are other sorts of databases, and we'll talk about what those other sorts are and why you might use them over a relational database. But for 85% of what you have to do, a relational database is perfectly fine. In module 2, we'll talk about query by example. That's what QBE stands for. In module 3, most databases, most relational databases, are accessed using a thing called SQL, or the structured query language. And that's one of the prime things you will learn out of this course, how to use the two main parts of SQL, the DDL, the data definition language, which constructs a database, and then the data query language, the piece that extracts information out of it. Both of those are part of SQL. Then we'll talk about some advanced topics. We'll look at how your first attempt at a database is probably not a very good database, and how we can use techniques called normalization to make the database better, faster. We will talk about relationships. Often some pieces of data are related to other pieces of data, and it helps to capture those relationships in SQL, in the database, so that we know when we make a mistake. And then the last piece is more about database management and the things you can do professionally with a database. Okay, that's about all I wanted to say in this video. Please have a look at Blackboard. There are a couple of people who've already completed the first few tiny assignments. They're not much, they're more just to get your feet wet into some of the things we're doing at the moment. So have a look at those. And in the next video, I want to talk a little bit about the topic, what is a chair? Think about what is a chair, and we'll